Good evening and welcome once again to the official MUFON Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Beckwith. Tonight, researchers artificially create an RNA molecule that replicates. Why an alien civilization would send out von Neumann probes. What Lue Elizondo said when asked whether UAPs are piloted by extraterrestrials. John Greenwald from the Black Vault on partial release of the June 2021 classified version of the UFO UAP report, and John Schussler talks about handling extraterrestrial materials. All that, along with the latest, strangest cases from the files of MUFON, including completed unknowns directly from the MUFON Field Investigators who investigated those cases. All that coming up right now on the official MUFON Podcast. Researchers at the University of Tokyo have for the first time been able to create an RNA molecule that replicates, diversifies, and develops complexity following Darwinian evolution. This has provided the first empirical evidence that simple biological molecules can lead to the emergence of complex, lifelike systems. This from SciTech Daily. In this study, RNA molecules were incubated in water and oil droplets at 37 degrees Celsius for 5 hours. The solution was then diluted to 1/5 the concentration using new droplets containing RNA-free nutrients and stirred vigorously. When this process was repeated multiple times, mutations occurred. A mutation is an alteration of single base units of RNA or DNA, or the deletion, insertion, or rearrangement of larger sections of genes or chromosomes. They found that the single RNA species evolved into a complex replication system, a replicator network comprising 5 types of RNAs with diverse interactions, supporting the plausibility of a long-envisioned evolutionary transition scenario. Compared to previous empirical studies, this new result is novel because the team used a unique RNA replication system that can undergo Darwinian evolution, i.e., a self-perpetuating process of continuous change based on mutations and natural selection, which enable different characteristics to emerge and the ones that were adapted to the environment to survive. The simplicity of the team's molecular replication system, compared with biological organisms, allows them to examine evolutionary phenomena with unprecedented resolution. This research provides further empirically based insight into a possible evolutionary route that an early RNA replicator may have taken on a primitive Earth or other life-bearing planet. The results could be a clue to solving the ultimate question that human beings have been asking for thousands of years. What are the origins of life? You will find a link to the SciTech article and the research paper from the University of Tokyo in the description below. More than 100 scientists, led by astrophysicist Avi Loeb, are involved in Project Galileo, a purely scientific endeavor to identify alien artifacts. They are subtly shifting the emphasis of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence from looking for signs of alien biology or electromagnetic signals to hunting for objects as signs of alien technology. This from Science Focus magazine. For 70 years, we've been barking up the wrong tree with SETI. That search is predicated upon the assumption that extraterrestrials communicate via radio waves, a technology that we have used for just over a century and which advanced extraterrestrials may have long ago abandoned. The best place to look for artifacts, says Avi Loeb, is in our own solar system, our own mailbox, as it were, where extraterrestrial packages have been able to accumulate for 4.5 billion years. Recognizing an alien technological artifact might not be easy. Alien civilizations could be as far from us in evolutionary terms as we are from ants, or even bacteria. However, Loeb says if a caveman picked up a mobile phone, he would know if it was different from a rock, though its purpose would be completely mysterious to him. Similarly, we should look for things that differ from rocks, says Loeb, and he does not mean only on the surface of bodies in the solar system, he means the space between the planets as well. Loeb is convinced that the search within the solar system for more objects like Oumuamua, and even smaller, is worthwhile. And now he has the seed money to do it. Loeb accepts the possibility that extraterrestrials may be very difficult to find. They may be hiding, for instance, because it is a dangerous universe, and if you signal your presence, you get wiped out. If so, it might be too late for us, since our signals have been traveling into space for more than 100 years. More importantly, says Leb, knowledge of the existence of an alien civilization would make differences between people on Earth seem trivial. In the 20th century, denial of this caused the deaths of 3% of the world's population at the hands of the Nazis and others. ETs would show us that more unites us than divides us. You'll find links to the Science Focus article and the Project Galileo website in the description below. The Black Vault has managed to secure the partial release of the classified report on unidentified aerial phenomenon given to Congress in June of 2021. This effort by John Greenwald and the Black Vault is the result of a mandatory declassification review case filed under 32 CFR Section 1704 less than 24 hours after the public version of the same was released. The case mandated that the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, in conjunction with all agencies and military branches that contributed to the report, review their respective contributions and, in the end, release the unclassified, declassified, non-exempt portions. We already know what the executive summary in the classified report tells us. 1. The limited amount of high-quality reporting on UAP hampers our ability to draw firm conclusions about the nature or intent of UAP. 2. Most of the UAP reported probably do represent physical objects, given that a majority of UAP registered across multiple sensors to include radar, infrared, electro-optical, weapon seekers, and visual observation. 3. There are probably multiple types of UAP requiring different explanations based on the range of appearances and behaviors described in the available reporting. When individual UAP incidents are resolved, they will fall into one of 5 potential explanatory categories. 1. Airborne clutter. 2. Natural atmospheric phenomenon. 3. USG or U.S. industry developmental programs. 4. Foreign adversary systems, and 5. The catch-all other bin. 4. UAP clearly pose a safety of flight issue and may pose a challenge to U.S. national security. Safety concerns primarily center on aviators contending with an increasingly cluttered air domain. UAP would also represent a national security challenge if they are foreign adversary collection platforms or provide evidence that a potential adversary has developed either a breakthrough or disruptive technology. Here is John Greenwald on Sunrise This Week talking about the release.
Sure. So we know when that report came out to us, the general public, Congress was given a report themselves in a classified setting. The unknown was exactly what it was going to entail. So I filed a case the next morning after we got the public version to get that released. It took until now to actually get it released, heavily redacted, but it does offer a little bit of a glimpse into what Congress saw in a classified setting and how the UFO phenomena is not easily explainable. Even though the public report told us that, it goes into greater detail about various military pilots encountering UAPs, exhibiting technology that we don't have, a identification that we can't peg. This phenomena, whatever it is definitely real, and it's plaguing military pilots. And this new document released, which again was given to Congress in that classified setting, gives more of a glimpse of what really is there when it comes to the phenomena and how they can't explain it. What's interesting is when you talk about the explanation, skeptics, debunkers, if you want to call them that, come out and say, well, it could be classified technology or drones or stuff like that. What's interesting about this is they investigated 144 cases, and they could not put 143 of them in any category that they came up with. They were only able to explain one, which was a balloon. The other explanations, they said, were potentially classified systems from our own military or a foreign adversary, but they weren't able to identify any of the cases they investigated into those categories. So even though those mundane explanations exist, and I think any investigator would acknowledge that, What's interesting is with the resources of the U.S. military, they couldn't put him in those categories. Is this alien? Well, of course, you're not going to see that in the report, nor do you. But they didn't rule it out, and they said that last year, and this report solidifies that that's on the short list of possible explanations.
You'll find links to the Rising program with John Greenwald and the blackvault.com in the description below. Lue Elizondo appeared on Earth Files with Linda Moulton Howe this week, and here's what he had to say when Linda asked him whether he thought these objects are being piloted by extraterrestrials.
I think for me is when you have the eyewitness testimony of fighter pilots that is then backed up by the electro-optical data, or in this case, gun camera footage, which is then backed up by radar data. And they're all describing the same event at the same time, at the same place, under the same circumstances, and maneuvering in a way that is simply outside of our current understanding of physics and aerodynamics. That really causes you to pause, because what we're talking about is some sort of disruptive technology. And I don't mean disruptive in a negative way. What I mean disruptive by a game-changing technology that is beyond next generation. There is a natural arc to things when you talk about technological advancement, right? So in order, for example, to have the supercomputer, you first need to invent the computer. Before you can invent the computer, you have to invent, microchips and vacuum tubes and electricity. And there's a natural scale for technology to be eventually presented and used by humans. And in this case, we're looking at technology that we're nowhere even near any type of arc on being able to understand some of the performance characteristics. So what we are witnessing are objects that can fly, if you will, but without the associated technologies. No wings, no obvious signs of propulsion or thrust, not even a cockpit, no rivets, nothing, not ailerons and rudders and control surfaces that we associate for maneuvering. And yet these things are in our atmosphere. There's one of the observables we had in the Pentagon was hypersonic velocity. And that is speeds that are characterized by Mach 5 or above, Mach being the speed of sound. That's very fast. Now, we do have aircraft that can do it. So let's take this little mock-up, and let's say it's an SR-71. When I'm doing 3,200 miles an hour in the SR-71 and I want to take a right-hand turn, it takes me roughly half the state of Ohio to do it. Right. Yet what we are seeing is precisely what you just described. An object that is flying at not 3,200, but 8, 9, 10, 11, 12,000 miles an hour and able to do right-angle turns. Something that is well beyond any technology that we have. You're talking about extreme acceleration, hypersonic velocities, and frankly, the ability to maybe operate in space as well and underwater.
You'll find links to the Linda Moulton Howe website, Earth Files, and the episode with Lue Elizondo in the description below. Yesterday, I had a rare opportunity to sit down with one of MUFON's founding members, former NASA engineer John Schussler. I got to ask him something I've always wanted to know. Whether in all the years he had been investigating this phenomenon, all the time he'd spent at NASA, he had ever held anything in his hands, like a piece of alien technology that he thought might have come from another star system. Here's what he had to say.
Several times over the years, I have been handed material that I thought well may have been extraterrestrial. I couldn't prove it, but we did have some luck at that. We had, going back to one that was almost an old wives' tale, was the Aurora, Texas 1897 incident. Walt Andrus got interested in that because we had an investigator in Dallas that was a radio personality, and he stimulated this. And what happened was we found dozens of people that were still alive. We had the interviews, we had the locations, we had a team digging out the material that was supposedly found there. And Walt sent this to 7 different laboratories, I think it was at the time. He gave me one, and I had one of my friends who was an aerospace failure analysis person that could look at a piece of material and know how to analyze it to blow it up, look at the structure, measure the constituents of it. And at first he thought maybe I was being silly, but when he started running this through the various tests, he said, ooh, this is different. He said, I'm getting almost pure material here with some minor inclusions of something else. And that's not what we're able to make right now in that early time in our space program or our manufacturing programs. You made that kind of material in the laboratory for laboratory work only, and you don't find it out in the field. And when we looked at this piece of material under the photomicrographs and the various other analyses, we found that the external surface of it had all the constituents of the soil constituents where it was picked up. It had all of the purities once opened up. And I don't want to lead you on to think of this as the most marvelous thing ever. There's a lot better things right now, I believe. But nevertheless, that was very stimulating technologically, and it was very good for other people. Now, you say, well, that guy may have faked it. Well, one of the TV programs that I think Bill Burns stimulated had their person come to Houston, contract a laboratory that does material analysis for NASA, and keeping this in close control so we didn't have any missing time on the sample still. They ran the analysis not knowing what we had found before, and it came up with exactly the same analysis that we had originally in my friend's aerospace lab. And so that was a good thing for me to have, even if nobody else cared. And we don't, how can we say we know it's not true? We know that it has happened. We know, but you got to have a bigger proof of it out there for the scientific community to accept, for the world to accept. And I've had it awful recently. If you could recover that piece of material and the equipments have been maintained on it, we can get a new kind of test that they do now that they didn't do way back then. And so I'm much more interested in testing a piece of material today that we get fresh and comes from a site where an incident has taken place. Others that have been done, we had a number of them sent to us in our UFO group in Houston. And you can't prove anything. That's the problem. Everybody said, well, you faked it. No matter what you do, no matter how you video it, when you're doing it, no matter what, have witnesses monitoring what you're doing. Then there's always this other whole large community out there that says, that's not true. You guys are just making money off of it, or some other dumb statement. So, you know, that frustrates all of us, but nevertheless, it works. And we should be doing this for aerospace companies or shipping companies, NASA or anybody else, because we know what we're doing, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. So get out there and do the work and quit making excuses, is what I always tell these people.
Several interesting cases have been filed this month with MUFON. Here are just a few examples. On Tuesday, March 15th, 2022, at precisely 7:21 p.m. Eastern Time, a witness in West Virginia reported that he was repairing a broken water line when something told him to look up. When he did, he and his friend both saw a tic-tac-shaped object moving approximately 450 to 500 feet above them from south to north. The object made no sound at all and moved extremely slowly. He was trying to get a video on his phone, but was only able to get a photo before the object disappeared behind the hill across from his house. This case was submitted to the MUFON CMS on March 23rd, but it occurred at approximately 4 a.m. on April 14th, 2021 over Las Vegas, Nevada. The witness here reported seeing and recording a large black boomerang-shaped object as it glided silently over the city. Now, this video is only about 15 seconds long, but you can see about 10 seconds into the video very clearly as an object glides silently above the hotel across the street.
Look how long it is. What is that? It's long as a mother right now. Is it fucking long? It's coming this way.
Is it really?
Oh, hell to the no.
Oh, there it is. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Oh my God, it's coming this way. I'm going inside.
Whoa, whoa.
Is it a glider? I'm going in the house. I'm going inside.
Wow.
I'm scared.
No further details have been provided, and the case has been assigned to one of our MUFON investigators in Las Vegas. Here are some of the latest completed unknowns. On December 7, 2021, at precisely 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time, the witness in case number 11964 reported hearing a rumbling sound, then looked up to see a triangular-shaped craft with 3 lights at each corner and 1 red blinking light in the middle. He managed to take about 1 minute of video with his cell phone. Our chief field investigator in Kentucky, Samuel Whittington, investigated that case for us. Samuel, what can you tell us?
So the case came to me not long ago, and I first viewed the footage in the CMS, and I've got to tell you, it's really impressive footage. It wasn't very grainy, especially for it being nighttime footage that showed just a triangular craft that had 3 white lights on each point of the triangle, and then in the center it had a red flashing light just blinking, and it made, in the video you couldn't really discern a whole lot of sound. Now, according to the witness report, he heard a low rumble, and I thought maybe, this could be an aircraft of some sort, but it didn't have the navigational light configuration that you would see on a FAA registered conventional aircraft. So I checked an app, Flight Radar 24, and I was looking for flights in that area that matched the trajectory and altitude that this witness had observed this craft. And there was one. It was a flight that was at 39,004 feet AGL, above ground level. And this didn't seem to match what footage I was, looking at, because this aircraft has completely separate navigational lights. The lights are so much different than the configuration on this craft that the witness was seeing.
Thank you to Samuel Whittington for that excellent report and investigation. In case number 121113, a witness in Inman, South Carolina, reported that he and his girlfriend walked outside to go to the grocery store on March 6th at 7 p.m. and witnessed a bright light in the sky behind the clouds. They looked up at the sky to check the weather and immediately noticed a very bright light moving erratically. The witness recorded about 5 minutes of video. He and his girlfriend both took approximately 12 minutes of video together with their cell phones. Our investigator, William Brumleve, looked into that case for us. William, what can you tell us about MUFON case number 121113?
Yes, sir. I received this case from my state director on March the 7th, and it actually occurred on March the 6th. And the individual in question here was relatively well-versed in photography, and he has his own security service. And him and his girlfriend were going out, I think just going to go to the grocery store when I interviewed him. And he said he happened to look up the sky and he saw these lights that were just moving very erratically and changing colors and going different directions and speeds. He's used to looking up the sky and stargaze. He'd never seen anything like that himself at all. So he stated that he also pulled out his cell phone, pulled up some type of an app that he was using to see what planets and things were available. Nothing was there, just seeing that night sky. And him and his girlfriend actually videotaped this for probably, I think he said 5 to 10 minutes. When it started to go out of view, they actually went down a little bit further, followed it, and was able to capture it again until it just basically disappeared. As I questioned him, I wanted to find out a little bit of his background. He stated that he was he owned his own security company. He's well versed in cameras and photography. He's used to looking at videotapes. He's also used to looking at anomalies, things like that. He had never in his life seen anything like this.
Well,
the strangest part to me, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say the couple's reaction in the videos is amazing. You can tell that the witness in particular is extremely taken aback by what he is recording.
Yes, he stated that for some odd reason, he became extremely frightened. I asked him if he had any idea why. He said no, because I don't frighten easily. But for some reason, what he was observing, he just knew in his gut was not normal or natural or anything he'd ever seen before. I asked him if his girlfriend had the same reaction, and she said that she did not have it. She did not have it until she could see his reaction, and she got a little concerned about that. But the actual reaction came from him. And he said it was as if an overwhelming feeling of fear. And I said, well, when the anomalies were gone, did you still have that feeling? He said, no, it went right away. And he has no adverse effects after that. It just went away, and he's fine. I asked him about certain medical conditions or something like that. He said he had none that he knew of, and he said he was feeling fine. Working up to the sighting, they were just going to go to the store. And when they came out and saw it, as he observed it, said the longer he watched it, the more frightened he became.
Was he able to make an estimate about the size of the object?
I asked him that question too, and he said it was moving so fast. He said, but he got the feeling, and I don't know, I guess from his fear or whatever, that it was relatively large, but it was way off in the distance, but it was large enough to where he could still see it. And yet it still projected that fear to him. And I asked him, any reflection? He said, well, just like we saw on the videotape, that it's just like almost like an orb. I classified it as an unknown other because there were no structural features to the vehicle at all. And he said that he just, he sees aircraft all the time. He lives not too far from the Greenville-Spartanburg International Airport. He sees them all the time. He knows the aircraft. And he said he's never witnessed anything like this at all before.
Thank you to William Brumley for that excellent report. I'll be back in just a moment with some afterthoughts.
You are not alone. Thousands of people all over the world have sightings of UFOs per month. MUFON is a place to report them. Since 1969, MUFON has been investigating UFO reports and providing this information to the public. Our aim is the scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity. Support UFO research. Join MUFON today.
Humanity's interest in life beyond Earth began thousands of years ago. And while that is true, most of us go about our daily lives oblivious to the greater reality around us. We rarely take the time to look around and at least make an attempt to see the forest through the trees. Sometimes, if you quiet yourself and keep your focus in one particular area, you might catch a telling glimpse. The greatest of life's mysteries are not always 1,000 miles away on some distant island in the South Pacific, or at the top of some distant snow-capped mountain you will never climb. Sometimes they are right in your own backyard. Sometimes, without knowing it, the people you know best have stories to tell that would curl your hair, if you were just open-minded enough to listen to them without being judgmental. UFOs, UAPs, whatever, they're real. They always have been. They've been with us throughout history. It's never been a joke. Beneath it all is a foundational reality that will one day reveal itself to all of us. Will we be prepared? The best way to be prepared is to keep an open mind. Thank you for listening and for watching if you're with us on YouTube. please remember to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time, right here on the official MUFON Podcast.